Okay, hello everybody. My name is Lucas. I'm in your class coming to you from Oakland, California. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my Vivarium build project with you all today. I decided to try and approach this assignment for an ackie monitor, also known as the spiny tail monitor, ridge tail monitor. That's Varanus acantharus. So let's dig into it. So first things first, as we all know, we're approaching this assignment to discuss evidence-based herpetoculture and how to apply it when designing a naturalistic vivarium. So as our professor so graciously put it, many reptile and amphibian husbandry practices today are based on entrenched dogma and not necessarily science. So best way to combat that is going to be with evidence-based husbandry, which we are basing upon natural history when we're making our decisions. So actual in situ diet, habitat, climate, behaviors, even if what we find to be true in the wild contradicts what people have done in captivity, quote, successfully for decades. We've all heard it. Okay. Let's talk about ackies. So the spiny-tailed monitor, Varanus acantharus, there's a picture of one from Queensland, Australia. This is a small to medium-sized diurnal monitor species. It is a member of the Odatria, which are the dwarf monitors of Australia. So think, lace monitor, Komodo dragon, but in a tiny package, fierce, smart, and small. Very, very neat. They come in a few different flavors. Most commonly in US herpetoculture, we're looking at red ackies. So I'm not going too deep into subspecies or anything like that for the sake of this assignment, but just know that there are a variety of ackies out there. They are known, of course, for having spines on their tail, hence the name. They use those for defense and also to help lodge themselves in rocky crevices and things of that nature. All right. The ackie monitor is found over a large portion of the Australian continent, as you can see in the image provided here. They typically inhabit a warm, arid climate. However, something that spans such a wide range geographically is going to experience a myriad of different climates. And so they also are found in some tropical and subtropical regions. For the most part, ackie monitors always have pretty high humidity in their native habitat. So that is something to note, evidence-based husbandry for sure. They're also frequently associated with rocky outcrops, burrows, shrublands, spinifex grasslands, things of that nature. They can also shelter in trees, so they are capable of climbing if they choose to do so. And they spend a lot of time underground. They're semi-fossorial. They use burrows where they can protect themselves from predators and are buffered from thermal extremes, which of course, Australia certainly experiences. So, designing an enclosure for an ackie monitor. After reviewing the literature and thinking about natural history, I decided that my recommendation for the minimum size for one adult ackie monitor is going to be 3 feet by 3 feet by 18. I think that in an enclosure that size, you're able to craft something that has a lot more space than what the numbers suggest if you take advantage of vertical opportunity and create additional floor space off of the floor. So that being said, I do think that ackies are a species whose natural history would suggest that more space is more optimal. If you're able to give them more area, they will use it. They are an active diurnal foraging species. And so they will absolutely take advantage of the space that you give them. Varanid lizards in general forage over considerable distances in the wild. Various aspects of their anatomy and physiology are well suited to wide foraging strategies, which result in large distances traveled. So that is my recommendation there. So for my purpose, I went ahead and grabbed this large paludarium from my work. It was available to me because it came chipped, but not in a way that will allow an animal to escape. So that was pretty good. Great. Now, obviously, we all know a big part of this assignment was to design and create a naturalistic background. So for my purposes, I went ahead and lined the back of my enclosure with various types of foam. I used a aquarium safe silicone to adhere the foam to the back of my enclosure. And then I carved it. I did my best to follow my original schematic, providing a few different ledges, a prominent basking shelf up top, and I carved the foam with a hot wire, which made it a lot easier to create some interesting shapes and round off edges. And then, excuse me, once I had my foam where I wanted it, I went ahead and applied a few thin coats of pond sealant. So the pond sealant itself was the correct color I was going for, which made it nice and easy. I didn't have to go for any additional painting. I like the rock color that was achieved simply by using the pond sealant. I did have to carefully mix an A and B for that pond sealant and then apply it quickly because that stuff cured fast. I lost a lot of paintbrushes, toothbrushes, lost a lot of paintbrushes in a few buckets because that stuff does not stay liquid for long. But of course, pond sealant is going to be waterproof and fairly durable. So I figured it was a good choice for this enclosure. At the very last moment, with the last coat of pond sealant, I applied a sprinkling of Reptisoil to add texture to my background and make it look a little bit more naturalistic. Although, to be completely honest, I think it turned out a lot like tiramisu or cookies and cream ice cream, more so than rocks, but we all start somewhere. Here's another angle. There's that top shelf there that I was able to construct. I also did reinforce the foam bricks with wooden dowels. So that's something to note as well. And of course, rocky ledges, that is backed up by the natural history. That's why I'm choosing to do something like this, because ackies are associated with rocky outcroppings and they do like to wedge themselves onto basking sites in rocky areas. So that is evidence-based, in my opinion. Now, another really important aspect based on that natural history for ackies, them being semi-fossorial, spending time in burrows, is going to be our substrate mix. So I decided to opt for a mixture of orchid mix, which is a soil that is available to me at my local pet shop, exotic pet shop, and place of employment, as well as just typical white sand. So I decided to mix these two to create a substrate that had water holding capacity. It holds burrows fairly well. The addition of sand helps with that. And I like the way that it turns out. I mean, there's no way that I was going to be able to completely replicate the soils, the red soils of the Australian arid, zones. So I did what I thought would be most optimal in terms of burrowing potential and humidity retention. I thought that those were the two things that I should prioritize most with my substrate to promote natural behaviors and welfare. That being said, I decided that 10 to 12 inches of substrate depth, is probably ideal because I do want the ackie to have some room to burrow. This is a species that is going to lay its eggs underground in burrows if I ever do choose to breed, and they just like to burrow anyway. That's just part of their natural history. So allowing them to do so seems pretty evidence-based to me. Talking about lighting and heat. So with ackies, they do, like most monitors, like a pretty warm hotspot. Of course, that should be a gradient. You don't want the entire area to be scorching hot. But, a hotspot, a concentrated basking spot should be somewhere around 140 degrees based on the resources that I read during my research, both discussing captive husbandry and conditions in the wild. It sounds like a lot, but if you took the temperature of a rock on the ground on a day where the ambient temperature is maybe like 85 degrees, something not too crazy, it's going to be that hot on that rock. It's going to be well in excess of 100 degrees. So it's something that the lizards are adapted to utilize. And for that reason, I provided that. And my gradient is more of a vertical gradient, as you can see, heat at the top. And so the ackie will have its warmest spot right up there on that top basking shelf. And if it wants to thermoregulate, it can descend the enclosure and cool itself on the bottom. And if it needs to be even cooler, it can burrow, which is also promoting a natural behavior, because burrowing is something that they will do to avoid thermal extremes. So there you have it. I decided that I would provide heat in the form of 2 mercury vapor bulbs. And that, of course, is a full spectrum bulb, which provides UV as well, which we're going to talk about momentarily. But that is what I chose to do. My ambient room temperature sticks right around 77 to 80 degrees, so I did not need to worry about the ambient falling too low. Just mainly needed to worry about my hotspot. Here's another shot of that basking zone. I did go ahead and add a piece of slab rock there so that the ackie can get heat from an actual stone, much the way it would in the wild. And it's also pretty convenient for cleaning because the lizard likes to poop on the rock, and I can wash a rock. That's good. We like that. Thank you, lizard. UV, yes. This is semi-controversial among the ackie community, believe it or not. There are many people that have kept ackie monitors for a long time with no UV and have been, quote, successful. But in that sense, I'm talking about success as in the ackies had babies and didn't die. That doesn't take into account any biochemistry or assessments of welfare. So in my opinion, UV is a big yes for ackies, and I am basing my determination on this graphic right here. What you see is the average clear sky UV index annually on the Australian continent, measured around 12 o'clock midday. And if you recall our range map from earlier, a lot of the places that the ackie inhabits, according to this graph, experience UV indexes upwards of 8, sometimes into the teens. So I think providing a 10.0 UVB bulb makes perfect sense for this species, because that is what they are going to be experiencing out there in the wild. They are not living a UVB-free life. And as we discuss in this class, I think it is probably beneficial, even if not necessary, for their health. And again, the bulbs that I chose are mercury vapor bulbs. They do provide UVB and UVA. They're called solar glows if we're doing brands here. Okay, cage decor, furnishing. So talking about that natural history again, obviously the association with rocky outcroppings, went ahead and made my foam rocks. But then again, also ackies have been known to climb trees. So I went ahead and provided some long manzanita branches that the lizard can climb if it so chooses to get off of the ground, if it doesn't want to be basking, but also doesn't want to be on the floor. I then went ahead and also provided a couple fake plants. I went for fake plants that to me looked a little bit like spinifex grasses. And some of them are permanently installed into the foam and pond sealant. And one of them is simply placed in my deep substrate. And then, yeah, that rock up top for basking. All right. What about water? Ackie monitors in the wild get the majority of their moisture from the food that they consume. They're not a species that is particularly keen on drinking water out of a bowl. Again, often residing in arid environments with sparse aquatic resources. So a lot of water comes from food. That being said, I did choose to provide a small rechangeable disposable water dish as seen here. I do that because I have quite a bit of animals here and it keeps things sanitary for me without hours of scrubbing. And then I just recycle those containers. So went ahead and provided the water there. I also do keep up my humidity with daily spraying to try and aim for 65 to 85%, trying to replicate the natural humidity in our in situ environments for the ackie. Okay. Here's a little picture of my original schematic just for y'all to see what I was going off of. It kind of looks like a Super Smash Brothers map, but it works. It did the trick. So pretty pleased with it. I think that it's doing a good job. The lizard seems to be appreciating it. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and looking forward to see your builds as well. All righty. Bye.